There's a lot of things going on. And again, if you don't have the card to pitch, which you're pretty likely not to have the card to pitch, or if you do have the card to pitch, or if you want to beat the duel, you might have to discard a card because Lady Lygea's there. There is so much going on. Like, you just think about it, you go, well, actually, you could do this, but look at all these horrible things that will happen if you do and if you don't.
Howdy, friends. Craig here. It's time to talk about the Resurrectionist Master Jack Daw. These guys do a really good job of showing how you can maximize your guilty models. It's interesting to find out why they like Jakuna. You won't be surprised to find this out, but you're going to learn why he can be such a negative play experience. They only talk about one versatile model that they like to hire. We get to hear a strong case for why you should be hiring Drowned. And at the very end, there's a great segment on mistakes experienced players make. Enjoy.
Playing a tabletop strategy game allows you to unplug and test your skills against friends. Every week, Third Floor Wars delivers useful strategies, discussions, battle reports, and reviews to tabletop games like Malifaux. If you want to get better at the games you already play, or discover the games other people are playing, you are in the right place. Craig and Ray welcome you to the Third Floor and the Tabletop Talk broadcast.
Craig here on the Third Floor. Today we're going to do a deep dive into the Resurrectionist Master Jack Daw and how the Tormented crew works in Malifaux 3rd Edition. My guests today are Michael Roper and Jamie Varney. Now, you likely know Jamie as one of the top Resur players in the UK. Now, he's been on the show several times, and you'll want to check out his deep dive episodes, and I'll have those linked in the show notes. So, Jamie, welcome back to the Third Floor.
Hello again.
What have you been doing other than playing Bayou?
I've actually been playing Explorer Society.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so I took Explorer Society to an event a couple of weeks ago, and I'm taking them to an event tomorrow as well. Actually, just McCabe, with the fixed 50 soulstone of options that he currently has as Explorer Society.
Yeah.
But now, I'm having a lot of fun.
Yeah, I mean, he is fun. The only thing I really know about him, obviously, is through Alex Drake. Are you finding him as good as Alex likes him?
Yeah, I mean, he's doing very well for me, and he has no supporting models outside his keyword and no upgrades. So even in Explorer Society, he's doing quite well. So the power of him in Thunders must be insane at the moment.
Are you saying Thunders are good, Jamie?
I think good is a massive understatement.
That's funny. So our second guest is Michael. He's new to the show, but not new to me. He's a good buddy of mine here in the North Carolina Conference, or the Carolinas Conference, I should say, and a longtime Resur player. So, Michael, welcome to the Third Floor.
Great to be here.
So, Mike, how did you find miniature gaming and specifically Malifaux?
Well, it's the old story of no, I'm just kidding. Friend of mine, I used to play Magic, then I got in some other card games after that, and just one day he came out with it, and he was like, "Hey, tabletop game, if you want to try it, it's really cool." Da da da. And he's like, "It uses cards," and I was like, "Hold on, you got my attention there." And he was like, "Yeah, it just uses a poker deck, and you just flip for the duels, and you have a little bit more control." I was like, "It's not dice. You have my interest." And it sank in from there.
Nice. So was Malifaux your first mini game?
Yep.
No kidding. Very nice. Pretty hard to explore other ones after that, I would imagine.
Oh, yeah. Because one of the guys out here tried to show me God Tier a little bit.
Yeah.
And that looks pretty good, but it didn't have the same feel.
Yeah, I hear God Tier is really good. I know that James Doxey's really been enjoying it. And then Jim Ortiz, one of the local players, he's a big fan of it as well. I have not played it, but I've also not heard a bad word spoken about it.
It looks really nice.
Yeah, the models are pretty good. I've seen a couple painted up on Instagram. So, guys, what we're going to try to do is, give everybody a feel for Jack Daw, specifically the Tormented crew being played on the Resur side. I want to get an idea from both of these gentlemen, really, how does the crew play? How does Jack Daw play? What are some decisions that you should make if you're going to bring him into specific pools, or depending on what the opponent is, whether any changes are going to happen there? We'll even cover the core crew and also how we can counter, or what is Jack Daw Daw afraid of? So, Jamie, let's start with you. Can you give the listeners a quick overview of Jack Daw? So let's pretend someone listening's never played him, never played against him. What kind of style master is he?
He's quite an aggressive master. He's got a couple of different things going on. I think one of the main mechanics you need to be aware of if you've never played with or against Jack is going to be his Undying Ability. So Jack only has 6 wounds, which sounds absolutely crazy for a master, but Jack has an ability that when he would suffer damage, he may discard a card, and if he does so, the damage that he suffers is changed to 1 irreducible damage. So effectively, you're potentially having to hit him 6 times. Now, this is backed up with plenty of options of healing as well. So he's quite survivable as long as you're careful with your resources.
And that immediately means that, you've got to pay attention to your control hand, right?
Absolutely, yeah. You've got to play really, really carefully with your resources, because if you get in a situation where you are in trouble and you're getting your opponent's getting a lot of attacks through, you'll quickly find Jack disappearing off the table.
So, Michael, I would imagine if someone's putting pressure on Jack, you kind of look at your control hand in a different way, not as a way to win duels as much as a way to reduce damage, or how does that management work?
Sort of back and forth, because what I love about Daw is the fact that I've always loved whenever you can look at your hand and every card matters. So whenever you pull your opening hand, if you're looking at it, you're like, that's a 2, a 3, and a 3, and this hand doesn't look that great. With Daw, you're actually really comfortable with that because that's your damage reduction, and then those high cards are you actually pushing a duel in your favor. But
yes. Oh, I'm sorry. So I would imagine then in that situation, obviously, let's say that someone's moving in on Jack, and you've got, a severe in your hand. It's worth cheating in to win the duel, because otherwise you're going to end up pitching it potentially to prevent the damage anyway, right?
Definitely. But that kind of goes into another part of the front of his card, which is on all of his Tormented models, they have the base ability Torment, which is at the end of the activation, if they've damaged an enemy model that has an upgrade, you'll draw a card. So you're in between activations, you're going to continue to keep up a hand, so his damage reduction doesn't run out so fast.
Yeah, and I think the biggest note there is that it's damaging, right, Jamie? It's not necessarily killing a model.
Yeah, that's right. So there's another bit. So there's a few bits I think we need to go through here, because that leads into then Jack's Injustice ability, which is when a Tormented model in his crew would draw 1 or more cards. He may instead heal 1 for each card that would have been drawn. So that your health pool is a resource that goes hand in hand with your cards. And the next bit, so I think this bit depends on how you play Jack, is a massive part of his survival mechanic is the pressure that he puts on your hand and his terrifying. So I think certainly the way I play Jack is that he gets rid of the opponent's hand as quickly as he can, because that is his main survival mechanic. If they're not passing those terrifying duels, he's not having to pitch cards.
Right. And if you're in a situation too where your control hand by sheer nature it has pressure on it, right? Because of this mechanic that we're talking about, in order to kind of even the playing field, you're going to want to put that much pressure on your opponent. Otherwise, they're just going to be one up on you as far as being able to cheat.
Absolutely.
So, Michael, it talks about, an upgrade. So let's quickly talk about how these upgrades are getting on the opponent.
Okay. Well, the 3 main models that can do it in Daw's crew will be Jack Daw himself, the Hanged, and the Guilty. Hanged have it on a bonus ability. Daw has it on one of his regular abilities. And Guilty is if you kill it, its demise ability will hand you one of the Tormented upgrade. They're all fall into the special Cursed style, which is what Daw works off of. He'll try to give you these negative upgrades and then take advantage of that by having his crew attack you for that. I get more cards to either heal, reduce, or push the duels, and you're getting staggered. I get to push you around, or you're taking more damage, you're discarding more. I get a bigger hand. It's a lot of things in my favor, and it's a very aggressive snowbally type style once it can get moving.
So out of curiosity, Jamie, obviously this is going to be on average, but how many upgrades are you going to have dished out at any point in time?
I guess that depends what you're doing with Jack. You'll always try to get the Hanged, putting 1 out in each of its activations. Jack, you're generally I generally try and put 2 out turn 1 if I can, but you're at least trying to get 1 out. And then that will depend, your turn 2 will depend on what threats are around Jack and how many upgrades you've already got out.
So there's a variance there, right? And it kind of depends on really what the opponent does to a certain degree, I would expect.
Yeah, so if Jack's threatened, he can go full aggro and take a model off. But if he's not particularly threatened, then he's probably better off just throwing some more upgrades out at turn 2.
And in its own way, by doing that, supporting the rest of the crew and helping him keep himself alive.
Exactly, yeah. And the other thing, so the other thing that Jack plays around with, which has already slightly been mentioned, is staggered. And staggered plays a big part in the synergies that he's got on his actions and other models in the crew as well.
So you talk about eliminating models. Let's talk about his offensive capabilities. How is he deleting models?
So so we'll talk about the 2 attack actions. So the way he's putting out upgrades is suppress memories, which does damage when he's doing it. So it's 2/3/3 damage track, and if the target is an enemy model, you can attach an injustice upgrade to it. He's got an ability or a trigger to place to a model with on your heels, which is a great way to get him around the board, because otherwise he's not the most mobile master. Other than that, once he's got the upgrades out or he's attacking a staggered model generally, he's got a stat 6 attack that attacks move at range 1 in melee. That does 2/3/4 damage, and if the target has staggered, it must discard a card. So that's instantly a way you're looking at putting that pressure on your opponent's hand. He's got a few different triggers on that. The 2 main ones you're going to be looking at is Can't Breathe on a ram, which is if the target has staggered, when resolving it suffers +2 damage.
Nice.
So that takes him to a crazy 4, 5, 6 damage track. And then he's got an Execute on a crow. So if we're looking at pressuring the opponent's hand, if you're doing that attack against a staggered model, which you're always going to try to be doing, and you're triggering Execute, which you're going to stone for or have a card for if you're trying to get rid of the opponent's hand, they're discarding a card and then another card or a Stole Stone as well.
So out of curiosity, Jamie, how many stones do you usually run Jack with?
I've got 2. It depends on the list. I do have a list that runs with 8.
Okay.
Which is the Execute list. The idea behind it is between Jack and Monty, I get rid of your hand and then try and execute your models. But you could run with less. I probably wouldn't. I probably would run with less, but I wouldn't run with less than 5 with Jack, really. Yeah. I think his triggers are so big and he needs to be able to take out a threat that's there. So you need to be able to force through that ram trigger or force through that crow trigger. The exception probably being in Outcasts, where the Prospector is a great choice for him and can generate extra stones. You might drop a little bit lower.
Yeah, that could definitely make sense. So, Michael, out of curiosity, I mean, we kind of gone over his, how he stays on the table with it's an integral part of what makes Jack Daw Jack Daw. What I'd like to know, though, is for you, how often is Jack seeing turn 5?
Almost always for me, because the amount of resources you have to sink into him. His melee attack will try to force you to discard a card. If you get that Execute, that's another card or a stone. I'm going to be slowing down your move with the staggered. He sucks out all of your resources. You don't get a hand. You don't get as much mobility. You have to really look back at your crew and go, well, I've lost a lot of my tricks. What can I do now? It's really hard to get past this terrifying, because also another thing on the front of his card was that Aura 6, 1 less willpower.
Oh, yeah.
So that terrifying 12 really reads like a 13. And whenever you're trying to just flip the top card of your deck only, you can't do much. Even whenever you hit him, it's only 1 damage. The next activation, I'll shoot with a dead Outlaw, and surprise, I'm back to full health again.
Yep. Now, how about you, Jamie? Does he pretty much see the end of the game for most of your games, or?
Usually, he usually does, and it's again exactly as was just discussed. Is that he puts the pressure on, gets rid of your hand, and then you just can't hit him. Now, I think people who have faced Jack a few times will wise up and build their crew a little bit cleverly to get around his tricks, but against most people, or certainly against anyone that's never played Jack, they're in for a really bad time trying to kill him. And the other thing to mention, which we sort of touched on, where he's dropping your willpower, actually, his suppressed memory attack is then attacking your willpower that is lowered by 1.
Nice.
And actually, if you're staggered, his melee attack is attacking your move, which is then lowered by 2, and a lot of the crew is attacking your movement as well.
So that staggered has a lot more of an impact as far as being able to dish out the hurt.
Yeah, it really does.
Yep. So, and I think I know the answer to this, Jamie, but let's say at end of turn 3, you lose Jack for whatever reason, right? Does that mean you're going to be in a lot of trouble? You're going to lose more situation at that point? How linchpin is he in the crew, or is the crew okay on 4 and 5 without him?
They're okay without him because for me, he is killing models. And if he's gone, it's going to depend what he's achieved up until that point.
Right.
He generally goes for the biggest, nastiest ball of enemy models, puts upgrades on them, and then just throws away their cards so that they can't touch him. And if he's doing that, if he goes down but he's taken 2, 3, 4 models with him, that's been a fair trade.
Yep. Yeah. If he's taking out 15 points, 15, 20 points worth of models, and you're good with that trade. But it's good to know that he's not a linchpin to the crew, that they can actually get some work done without him, though I'm sure that's less than ideal. So guys, I think that gives us a good idea of really kind of how Jack Daw plays and feels, but I think it's really amplified by the Tormented crew. This is one of those keywords where they work together as a team. He's not a run out and do his own thing type of master. And there's a lot of these mechanics that we've talked about that bleed through. So let's take a quick break, and when we get back, I want to learn from both of these gentlemen really what their core crew is, and what are the models that they use for beating as well as scheming. So we'll be right back. Howdy, friends. Did you know on Spotify you can listen to all of your favorite artists and podcasts in one place for free? You don't even need a premium account. Spotify has a huge catalog of podcasts on every topic, including your favorite pod, Tabletop Talk from Third Floor Wars. On Spotify, it's easy to follow your favorite podcast so you never miss an episode. Premium users can download episodes to listen to offline wherever you are. They make it easy to share what you're listening to with all of your friends on Instagram. So help support all of the content coming from Third Floor Wars and download the Spotify app. Search for Tabletop Talk on Spotify or browse podcasts in the Your Library tab. Make sure to follow us so you never miss an episode of Tabletop Talk. Okay, so boy, Jack is just such a different master, which, you know what, makes me happy. I love keywords that are unique, and there's so many in Malifaux 3rd Edition that are just really kind of their own thing. So, Michael, for you, obviously the first thing you're going to bring in is the totem. So can we talk about Jack's totem?
Definitely. Lady Ligia, if that's how you pronounce it, Ligia. I've heard it differently. She's a very cheap, not very particularly amazing totem, but she has one very good front of card ability that really makes her worth it, which is Betrayal. It's enemy models within Aura 6 must each discard a card to cheat fate, which can be crippling on the resources we've already talked about.
Yeah.
Is every time you're like, hey, he cheated a high card, I really need this duel to go through, I want to hurt Jack. Lose 2 cards to hit me once and only end up doing 1 damage.
Well, and that's even going to need to happen if you're trying to get through the terrifying and need to cheat to make the terrifying.
Oh, yeah. It works on everything for cheating fate, including if I attack you, if you attack me, terrifying, any simple duel, just everything makes you discard a card just to cheat fate. It includes your own simple duels.
Yeah, and I think probably the big challenge, obviously, I would imagine, is making sure Lady's in the right place and also is kept safe as well.
Yeah.
So what's your first hire then?
Hanged.
Okay, let's talk about the Hanged.
For 8 cost, you get a defense 4, willpower 6. They only have move 4, but that's very deceiving. They have terrifying 12 and incorporeal, so pretty regular defensive right there. But they have an ability called Forever Doomed. This model treats any black jokers it flips or cheats as red jokers, and enemy models treat any red jokers that they flip or cheat in opposed duels with this model as black jokers. This is hilariously dumb how much this comes up, because it's usually, if I almost always take double hanged just because they're so annoying to get through. It's what the crew wants to do is waste your resources. So to get through that, the amount of times that I've seen people flip a red joker at damage or just in a duel, it's painfully hilarious. Daw will always be a little bit of a negative play experience because you're going to have at least 1 or 2 really bad moments against him, because everything you wanted to go right just will not.
Well, and then, having a black joker in your control hand has a different feel to it as long as you relegate that to the activation for the hanged, right?
Oh, yeah. That's what I was talking about with like everything in your hand always feels amazing.
Right.
In this crew, when you see a black joker, it's gold.
Very nice. Now, what job do the hanged, other than, ticking off your opponent, what is their job on the table?
They normally play for my beaters along with Jack Daw. But then one other thing I wanted to get to on the front of card abilities is on top of all these other defenses and jokers being the dirtiest thing with them, they're also attuned. So they play like they were a henchman.
And that kind of gives us a little bit even more insight to what Jamie was saying, which is running pretty high stones.
Yeah. That's why I normally go with the 7 or 8, just because the amount that you'll do for your suits on your duels or just preventing damage, this is how most of the crew will actually survive pretty much forever.
And their ability to use soul stones is going to give a whole new perspective as far as his attack actions. So when we talk about the attacks actions, and he's got some interesting triggers.
Yeah, that's what I was wanting to make sure I mentioned that first, is the same thing as Jack Daw. They have Dead Man's Collar, the 1-inch 6 against move, but they have the built-in ram.
Nice.
It's the 2, 3, 4. If you're staggered, you have to discard a card. Their built-in ram trigger is way down. And this is on a good variety of Jack Daw's models, which is the target must have an upgrade attached. When resolving, deal +1 damage. So they're usually a min 3 beater.
Right.
Because they're going to use the bonus action that they have. Horrifying Whispers is a 10-inch range, 6 against your willpower. Again, if you're near Daw, you have 1 less willpower. It's an enemy only. Attach a forbidden upgrade to the target. That's just their cursed upgrade that they'll give you.
Out of curiosity, Mike, I'm trying to get a sense of how important it is to get those upgrades out. So let's say, for example, you have Horrifying Whispers and you're trying to push that through. I mean, do you hesitate to cheat in a severe to make that happen? How important is that handing out the upgrades? I think it sounds like it's really important.
It's very important.
Yeah.
I will easily put the best cards in my hand towards it because the more things that are upgraded, one of the things to keep in mind about Daw, he has a bonus action Fickle Tormentor, which is a pulse 4. For all the enemy models, each different one that has one of the cursed upgrades, he'll draw a card.
Oh,
so
nice.
Keeping all of these upgrades out as much as possible is critical to keeping Daw go from 2 health, you almost had him dead, draw 4 cards, and now he's back to max health.
Got it. So, Jamie, is Hang the first place you go as well?
I do normally take at least one hanged, and I quite like them as a scheme. I'm not going to say runner because they're definitely not a scheme runner, but they've got a trigger on their melee attack to drop a scheme marker in contact with the enemy, and they can use stones. So it's a great way to get schemes for stuff like detonate charges and other things that are in the area you're going to be playing in, which is the only kind of schemes you take with Jack. But actually, the thing that I hire first when I'm building a Jack Daw crew is actually an upgrade. And that is Grave Spirit's Touch on Jack.
Nice.
Regeneration on Jack is super amazing. It is well worth those 2 stones in any game.
Yeah. Again, and if anything, it would be it's even that much more of a deterrent. Like, don't go into Jack unless you're going to finish the job.
Yeah, he can go with Grave Spirit's Touch, and even without it potentially, but with Grave Spirit's Touch, he can go from 1 health to 6 health in his activation comfortably.
That's a big deal. So if you're not hiring, so you did the upgrade, you're looking at 1 or 2 hanged. What else is on your core list, Jamie?
I really, really like his henchman, Montresaur. He is a defense 6, willpower 5. 10 wound model, so fairly standard for 9 stones. He is terrifying 11, which is sometimes 12 if he's playing near Jack. Probably the most important thing that he has that synergizes with the crew is that enemy models cannot end the staggered condition within 6 of him. Now, if we bear in mind a lot of his stuff is attacking movement, then you've got the Hanged and Jack making you discard cards if you're staggered as well. You want to keep that staggered about, and actually your opponent's important models that are activating early would normally lose staggered, but if Montresaur stood there, they won't. He also has an ability that enemy models that start their activation within 6 of him that are staggered suffer 1 damage, so there's a bit of ping damage there, which goes along with another model that puts ping damage on, and Montresaur's bonus action, which does ping damage to staggered models as well. he's also got Demise Eternal. So he's got quite a lot going on the front of his card, as well as a solid back of card with 2/3/4 damage on an attack that attacks move and gives out staggered automatically.
Yeah, that's a lot of value for 9 stones. Is that an early hire for you as well, Michael?
Definitely. Most games, but not every game, because I've really mixed between Resers and Outcast. And so I've gotten really flexible with and without Montresor. The other really must-have for me in most games is at least one Guilty, because the flexibility on them is ballistic for this crew. They have Hard to Wound, Torment, and the Demise that I mentioned earlier, that after this model is killed by an enemy, you attach the Wicked upgrade. But the big cheese on them is Guilty as Charged. Friendly Tormented models may treat this model as an enemy for the purposes of actions, abilities, and triggers.
Okay.
Jack Daw, on his ranged attack for 8 inches, has the mass trigger on your heals. Hanged have the same thing. A lot of the crew has a way to deal with enemy only, but they can also make a Guilty be treated like that. So Daw can attack a Guilty and use the mass trigger for like a 1 or 2 mask out of your hand, and suddenly port 8 inches, basically almost 10 inches worth, because base to base on the other side, which makes him surprisingly mobile.
Yeah.
Hanged can go from a 10 inches over here to jumping over the Guilty about 1.5 inches worth, almost 14 inches. 10 plus 1.5 plus about an inch on them, about 12, 13 inches or so. So even at the move 5 or move 4 that you read, if there's a Guilty somewhere around you, I can probably get to you from that Guilty.
So, Jamie, out of curiosity with the Guilty, with that Demise and the ability to, be treating friendlies as enemies, do you ever find yourself in a situation where you're killing a Guilty to get out upgrades?
No.
Yeah.
So the Guilty's upgrade is really, really good. I'm just bringing it up now. Sorry. Cool. So the Guilty's upgrade says that after this model, it gives an upgrade to the enemy model that kills it. It gives you Found Guilty +1, so it increases the opposing crew's maximum hand size by 1.
Oh,
so if you're giving that to your opponent, then that's increasing your maximum hand size by 1. And it also has gives the opposing model a Demise ability, which means that after it is killed, the opposing player, which would be the Jack Daw player, may summon an enemy Guilty into base contact with this model, and then the summoned model suffers 2 damage. So you're getting a 4-wound Guilty. Whoever kills the Guilty, you then kill them and get a 4-wound Guilty back.
Very nice. And on a typical game, Mike, how often are you summoning Guilty?
Fairly often, because when I was talking about the mobility trick, that usually damages your own Guilty.
Right.
Which the big mantra that I've had is abuse your Guilty, but don't kill them. I don't care if it's at 1 health, I'm happy with that. It's a free, easy kill for you because I want you to kill it and take that upgrade. And then I'll kill you right back because it's even easier now that you're cursed. I can jump up to you, I hit you, and I kill you. I dealt damage to a person, now I'm drawing a card. And I got my Guilty back.
Yeah, and so that Demise ability becomes its own defensive tech.
Very much so.
Gotcha. What are some other key models that we should know about, Jamie?
So I really like Jakuna, and I know not everyone is a fan of her. I like her in Urami and Tormented. So she's got Vengeance, which is always nice, a bit of ping damage, Serene Countenance, and Incorporeal, which keep her around quite nicely. There's a few different reasons I like her, though. So the main reason is Drowning Aura, which is a 3-inch aura around her that is hazardous terrain. Now, she's got ways to move you. Jack has a built-in trigger on his suppressed memories to push a tormented model within line of sight up to 3 inches towards a target. Push tormented model within line of sight of the target up to 3 inches towards the target. So you can target another model with a cursed upgrade that you've put on and push it, which is into that aura.
Yep.
You've got a few different things going on. And Staggered makes it really hard for people to get out of her little bubble of pain that she puts around. And I just think she's a good model. She can lure Jack out of trouble if he's in trouble. She can put Staggered on with her combat attack. She can move models around. I just think she's a solid piece for 8 stones. Quite hard to deal with, especially if you're getting rid of the opponent's resources.
Well, yeah, and obviously you want your opponent to be in certain places, right? With all these auras that we're seeing off of Montressor and off of Jack. So I mean, it's a stat 7 lure. That's a big deal.
Yeah, I really like her. Like, I agree. I say that she's probably not an every time hire, but I hire her quite often. I think she works really well with that sort of horrible bubble of misery that Jack puts you in.
Michael, do you find yourself in the camp of liking or not really caring about her?
I very much like her. She's, like he said, not an always hire, but when the schemes kind of line up for it, her lure can be backbreaking to like pull somebody off outflank at the last second. Her melee, along with that drowning aura, has a mass trigger you're coming with me. So you can push the target up to 3, then push this model back into base contact with it. So that's even more ping damage. If they're already close to her, she even has more ways to keep jerking them around and keep doing more of her base, the 2-3-5 on her melee 6 against defense, 1 inch. So she's already got you on a pretty good stat. She's going to grab you, pull you around, do more ping damage and more ping damage. If you get too close to Jakuna, it's gonna hurt a lot.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
Yeah, the other thing to bear in mind with that as well is that when you're in this bubble, you're going to activate, have stagger, take a damage from Montessor, be in hazardous aura. So then as soon as you do something, you're going to take another damage as well, and then you're just going to be surrounded by terrifying models, and it's pretty gross. The hands upgrade potentially can move enemy models if they don't discard cards. There's a lot going on that can really take advantage of bits of ping damage.
Yeah, I was about to say, I can imagine that when it's going against you, it's just got to be just brutal to be anywhere in the mix like that.
Yeah, it's something something that is genuinely, people feel really bad sometimes. and this is, I'm sure Michael will agree that people can have a real feel bad against Jack. You can have no resources. You can't attack anything because it's terrifying. If you're taking damage for activating, you're taking damage for moving. If you try and get away, they'll pull you back or they'll jump to you, and you just feel trapped and like you have no answers to it. Now, we'll get to that later in the how to beat him bit, but that is a real thing. He can be a horrendous thing to play against if you don't know what's coming.
Yeah, one of those keywords that the first time you face it, you hop on a weird place afterwards and start crying a river about how broken Tormented is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Matt Lewin of internet fame still does that. There's a little bit. He'll love that.
So, and to clarify, that's Matt. I play Arcanist Lewin. That's complaining about broken stuff. Okay, good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Mike, you made a mention of this model. I want to talk about it real quick. Talk to me about Dead Outlaw. Do you bring him in?
I do fairly often, because they're sort of my go-to minion aside from Guilty or Hanged, because they are, for a 6 cost, you're getting somebody hard to wound with 7 wounds, so they're already got that Resur kind of feel to them. They have Cursed Bullets, which is, its attack actions ignore friendly fire when targeting tormented models or when targeting models engaged by tormented models.
Nice.
So you don't really have friendly fire in your own keyword.
Yep.
They have Gunfighter, so their gun is also a 1-inch melee. But they have Run and Gun from the Bandit keyword. So at a move 5, with a 12-inch gun, 5 against defense, they have a good threat range to keep bouncing around and still land a lot of shots on you.
Well, and that mobility, I think, would also potentially make them a candidate as a scheme runner that can kind of hold its own.
Oh, yeah, that's what I definitely go for as a scheme runner after the other stuff. My Guilty will kind of go around but stay outside of the fighting bubble, because where I mentioned with On Your Heels, if Daw or Hanged, anybody's in real danger, they can just look backwards and go, hey, look, there's a Guilty. I'm going to jump over there out of danger.
Right.
My Dead Outlaws are kind of just running way around the bubble, doing whatever schemes I need, and popping in some shots whenever they want to.
So, Jamie, out of curiosity, who are you using to drop scheme markers?
I don't often take schemy schemes with Jack. If I do, it's going to be the Hanged or the Dead Outlaw's got a trigger as well. There's a couple of other synergies on the Dead Outlaw as well. So it ignores friendly fire when it's targeting tormented models or models engaged by tormented models, which your upgrades are putting out tormented as well, which is really, really good.
Oh, right.
The other thing it's got is an 8-inch range, stat 6 versus willpower, which is being reduced by Jack. Mm-hmm. Target non-leader enemy model within 3 of an enemy scheme marker. Target must either discard a random card or take a non-bonus action. So this is discarding a card that they don't have. So it's basically a free obey.
Right.
Which then, if they're in range of Jakuna, that's another ping damage. It's got a built-in trigger to do +1 damage as well, and then you can have it attack one of its own friendly models. Like, there's so much going on there. There's a lot of things going on. And again, if you don't have the card to pitch, which you're pretty likely not to have the card to pitch, or if you do have the card to pitch, or if you want to beat the duel, you might have to discard a card because Lady Lygea's there. There is so much going on. Like, you just think about it, you go, well, actually, you could do this, but look at all these horrible things that will happen if you do and if you don't.
If you do nothing, this happens, and if you do something, this happens, and that sounds like a ton of fun. So I'd be curious to know, with so many synergies, are you ever hiring or bringing in versatile models, and if so, which ones?
Yes, and one, and that is the bone pile for healing. And that is just I bring one bone pile and he follows Jack around as a emergency break glass. I'm going to heal Jack. But I just think they're a good model anyway. I think they get 2 AP and a heal. If you've got any need for healing in the crew, I think they're pretty good. Jack can normally hold his own, but I really like to time Jack's activation and not be forced to activate him because he's in trouble. And actually, if you heal Jack 3, he can go on for another 2-3 activations without worrying.
Right.
So I do like a bone pile. Aside from that, I keep it pretty in keyword.
How about you, Michael?
Same thing as bone pile. You can have it kind of follow around because the bonus to heal him a bit or remove a condition can be massive on the, once we get to the how to counter Jack. It's actually the counter to the counter Jack that everybody first looks at.
So, Michael, we talked about the fact that Jamie likes to put Grave Spirit Touch on Jack. Are you finding yourself using any other Resur upgrades in the crew?
Sometimes I'll put Whisper on Hanged if it's against somebody particular like Zareta, where she wants to obey. I'm going to get them into her crew, so I don't want them to immediately start trying to kill each other. It makes it a lot harder because it'll give them intuition, so at the start of activation, they can look at the top 3, put them back in any order, so they can kind of set up their actions the way they want it. After they kill an enemy model, you can draw a card, so that's even more healing for Daw, or just keeping your hand stocked up ready to reduce damage, win the right duels. But the minion-only ability is Stubborn. Enemy attack actions that are resisted by willpower suffer a negative when targeting this model. So, such as Obey, or just any really nasty willpower attack you kind of see coming, if you know, like against Terra, a lot of her stuff is willpower attacks. You can kind of set this up to be a little extra layer of wasted cards. When you flip
Pandora, anything like that.
Yeah, because when you flip that extra card on a negative, or you waste an action trying to focus up and concentrate, that's one less thing you have against me. It's always about pulling one more piece out of you, one more resource you didn't get to have you wanted.
Yep. So how about you, Jamie? Do you find yourself using Whisper?
I don't often, but I can see the merits of it. I just generally, there's so many things I want in a Jack crew that I don't have space. Like I fit Grave Spirit's Touch in, but you want a big stone pool as well. It's hard to fit it all in. There's also another model I quite like that's Tormented, which we haven't talked about, which just feeds even more into the how horrible it can be if you get caught in this. And that is the Drowned. So it's a defense 4, willpower 5 model with 7 wounds. It's got combat finesse, which makes it quite hard to deal with and hard to wound. The main reason that I'm going to talk about this is because it drops Riptide markers, which is a hazardous damage 1 staggered marker. It then has a way to push you around on both of its attacks and a bonus action to give you staggered. So I think if we then build a bigger picture of you're in Jakuna's aura and you're on a Riptide marker, and then he's pushing you around and you're staggered, like it's just, there's so many little bits of damage that you can activate, and if you do any actions, just die.
I'm getting a negative play experience hearing about this.
Yeah, it's super can be if you don't prepare for it.
Sure. Well, guys, let's take a quick break. When we get back from the break, I want to find out when Jack Daw comes out of the case. So we're going to learn what are some strategies that the Tormented crew does well in, what are some schemes that they like to see when they're playing Tormented, and what are some schemes you shouldn't take if you are facing Tormented. We'll be right back. How Howdy friends, Craig here. Nothing makes Malifaux easier than having the right tools. Here at the third floor, we love all the licensed Malifaux goodies from Custom Meeple. Not only are they helping support this podcast, they sell custom-made weird licensed tokens and terrain. They sell it all. Crew boxes, terrain, markers, tokens, and even a 3x3 full Malifaux board. Custom Meeple sells a complete M3E token set covering every marker and token you need to play. Custom Meeple are the source for the official accessories for Malifaux. Everything is designed by hand and authorized by Weird Games. Check them out at custommeeple.com, that's with one M, or follow the link in the show notes. Up your Malifaux game and be sure to tell them Craig from the third floor sent you. If you use the promo code Third Floor Friend, all one word, THIRDFLOORFRIEND, you'll get a 5% discount and help support the podcast. It's valid on everything except retail products and playmats. So, one of the key things to know how to do in Malifaux is to know when to bring a keyword out of the case. When is this scenario? When is this the scheme pool, the strategy, the whole the opponent? When is it time to pull that keyword out? So, Jamie, when does Tormented come out of the case? What do you need to see?
Generally, you should bring Tormented out when you don't like your opponent very much. No, but seriously, so Tormented is a great keyword for a killy game, a great keyword for an aggressive game. I find it doesn't spread across the board very well. It will take over a part of the board, pull you in, and make it the most horrible place to be. So by that token, you need to look at the game and see, is your opponent going to be forced to interact with you? If they're not, then Tormented probably isn't the right choice.
Right.
Something like Turf War, where you can push across the center and they've got to come towards you to do anything with it, is going to be a good choice for him. Reckoning's a good choice where they've got to come and interact with you. So something like Plant Explosives or Corrupted Idols, where your opponent can just stay away from you, Tormented will not be the best choice. You probably could take them. You probably would regret it over some of our other stronger choices for those options. And the schemes is going to be the same thing for me. You need to look at where you're going to be on the board. Does your opponent have the opportunity to score their points without interacting with you, without coming anywhere near you, or being far enough away that you're not going to be able to influence them with your models? Because you have some tricks to get around the board, but really once you get a little bit up the board, you're going to wanting to be set up count there, keep your opponent there, and kill their models.
How about you, Michael? Do you kind of go through that same process as far as evaluating whether Tormented comes out or not?
Definitely. Turf War and Reckoning are usually the best go-tos, just because, like we mentioned before, the auras that he puts out can be so devastating when put together that when you cover up around some turf markers, you don't want to ever get near that area. And you're not going to get all the way behind me to get my other turf markers, so I can start to just creep that forward into you. Reckoning is it's really tough crew, and it can easily execute you out of nowhere or anything like that, just tear you down. So those are definitely great strats. I like stuff like Dig or Take for schemes particularly, because like we said with Jakuna, she can be this little sucked out pit where you just fall in and you can't get away from that. So Take Prisoner can be really easy, because whenever you try to deny it, somebody runs in, just stands near. If I put a cursed upgrade on it, I have a lot of little tricks to just scoot you just a little bit too far out.
Yep. Yeah, it gives you the ability to control that enemy placement, which is key for something like that. So out of curiosity, Michael, if someone's facing a Tormented crew, what is the Tormented crew hard counter on a scheme basis? What should you not pick if you're playing against Tormented?
I definitely would not try to go with Vendetta on most of the crew or Assassinate. It's just the crew is so annoying in taking away all your resources, and it takes so many more resources to try to get through them, that attempting to kill certain models can just be way too much AP wasted, way too many resources burnt through, that anything else probably could have been a better choice.
How about you, Jamie? What schemes should someone pick against Tormented?
Schemes where they don't have to come and play your game.
Right.
Schemes where they can stay away from you. Schemes where they don't have to come anywhere near your models. Is generally a good choice.
Yes. So it sounds like you're going to want to bring Jack out when it looks like the pool fits his game, his style, what he's trying to do and where he's going to try to do it. And if you are faced in that situation, you're going to try to do everything you can to try to score points outside of, doing what Jack wants you to do anyway, right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, guys, let's take another break. When we get back, I want to talk about second level play. I want to learn from these guys. What are things that they discovered about a Tormented crew after they got in several games? And then we'll also talk about how to counter this part. We're officially retitling this segment the Matt Lewin segment. So stay tuned.
Hi there, this is Owen from the Nova Open, and I am a $5 patron of Third Floor Wars because I love supporting the whole Malifaux community. I want to help Craig and the whole Third Floor Wars team continue making the fantastic content that gets me through my daily commute. You should join me in supporting the show. Just pause this episode, head to patreon.com and search Third Floor Wars, or grab the link in the show notes. See you there.
Want to do a quick shout out for our all-time top patrons: Nick Westbrook, Craig Chuba, Stephen Morris, Kevin Smith, Sam Newman, James Hahn, Jeremy Peace, Ambrose Ingram, and Corinne Soles. It's because of you guys and gals that we're able to do what we do. This ends up being one of my favorite segments inside of any deep dive, because not only do we learn how to really turn up the volume on a keyword, but we also learn, when you're starting with a new keyword, it gives you a little bit of insight as you start getting good with the keyword, what you can look forward to. And then, of course, we'll be covering the counters. So, Jamie, what did you discover, or what do you consider second level play when it comes to Tormented?
There's a lot to remember when you're playing with Jack's crew. So it's going to be down to a few different areas when you've got enough upgrades out, or when it's better to attack or put an upgrade out. Also, remembering all your auras, remembering to draw cards, remembering that you've got the option to heal before you grab that card up. Thinking about what position you're putting your opponent in. Actually, a lot of playing Tormented is deciding, is that attack worth it, or is it more valuable to put your crew in a position or put your opponent in a position where they've got a lot of bad choices that's really going to tilt their play, really going to affect their headspace and what the options they've got are. And actually, you could do an attack with someone like Jakuna, or actually you could position yourself where you're affecting an extra one or two models that are then going to take hazardous damage when they activate, have to try and disengage from her, and have other things going on as well. So there is a lot going on there to think about, more than just, what model should I attack? What am I doing here? You've got so many things to remember, so many different instances of damage, so many special rules and abilities and auras that you need to keep in check with Jack's minus to your willpower. You've got Montresor's staggered auras. You've got Jakuna's hazardous. You've got so much going on.
Well, I would imagine too, Jamie, that, learning that with this crew, moving can be an offensive attack, or not an attack, but an offensive mood more than attacking, to your point.
Absolutely. Yeah. Moving, engaging things, making stuff walk a certain way across, through things. I mean, even positioning a model so that they have to move through Jakuna or into Jakuna or into Montresor's aura to keep the staggered on at the end of the turn by blocking another way that they could have gone. There's loads of things going on.
How about for you, Mike? What did you discover after you got several games in?
Definitely on Jamie's point with positioning is going to be massively key, because both positioning for you and where you put your opponent can be really backbreaking. You can stack up those auras, just take that Betrayal aura off of Lady Lygia. It's, well, hey, now I got to discard to cheat, and that's really annoying. Well, now you have to discard to cheat, and you're really slow, so you can't get away. And anything you do to, even like if you're trying to hit Jakuna because you're stuck near, that's re-encounterance. Well, no, I'll just concentrate. I'll get past it. You just took a damage to concentrate to take the attack, which is another damage. And it's just knowing, like, you got to kind of pay attention to watching, try to force your opponent into, if they don't need to focus, but you put them in a situation where now they really need to focus, and that's bad for them. Putting them in the right position where, hey, they have to do this or else. You have to play my game or else.
Right, and learning how to to force them, right? With your movement, with their positioning, with your ability to impact their positioning. That's a lot of moving parts. And it's one of those things when you listen to a deep dive like this, it sounds like, boy, I mean, this is crazy. There's no way to beat. I mean, you get a mentality that it's unbeatable, but you don't realize, I think, a lot of times when you're playing against a Jack Daw crew, just how much headspace it takes to set up this just nastiness. So I would imagine practice must be key.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Because another resource not really talked about is your actual mental state. If I play against you and like, hey, I fly in, I execute your big beater, what are you going to do now? You've mentioned in previous podcasts where one of the things you had to break past was as soon as somebody hits you, you don't immediately retaliate.
Yep.
If I fly in there and I mess you up and now you're tilted and you're like, well, I just want to kill something. Don't swing right back at the hanged. That's your worst move.
Right.
Because you're not going to get anywhere.
Yep. And again, you're going to end up playing Jack's game, right?
Yeah. But at the same time, for the Jack player, the keys, all these little things I'm setting right into place to make you do that. It's a lot to figure out too.
Yeah, a lot to keep in your head. So out of curiosity, Mike, if someone is going up against a Tormented crew, what does Jack not want to see, or what does he not want to see you do?
Oh, there's a whole list of things I can give for this.
Let's give a couple.
Mainly, he really doesn't like conditions, which is why Bone Pile were a really good thing, or Ruthless. In Resers, he has ways around them. If you see Outcast Daw, go all out. He has pretty much no answers to your counters now.
Mm-hmm.
But like Stunned, we've talked about that on your heels trigger being a really great safety button to get out with the guilty, or to fly into your face and ruin you. If I'm stunned, my bonus to Fickle Tormentor and redraw or completely heal him, that took an action now.
Yep.
If I'm stunned, I can't execute you. If I'm poisoned or burned, that's more little ticks of damage, where he's really great at taking this massive, you flipped a severe, I'm going to do 6 damage. No, it's 1.
Yeah.
Well, if you deal me 1, and then I burn for 1, and the poison ticks for 1, and your little minion pops a shot at me for 1,
yep,
that's 4 damage.
Yep.
It takes a lot more, but little ping damages and certain conditions are really rough on Jack.
Yep, that makes sense. How about for you, Jamie? What are things that you hate to see?
Yeah, those are the main two, conditions and Ruthless. Ruthless is such a big thing for Jack, because that is the biggest part of his defense, is that you don't have the cards to pass his Terrifying, and that you're having to discard a card to cheat against it and waste so many resources to get through it that then he can just execute your models. So Ruthless is a big thing. Conditions, for exactly the reason that Michael discussed, are a big thing as well. Depending on how you build your crew, if you do go for the auras, things that ignore hazardous can be a bit of a pain. But ultimately, if we're talking about countering Jack, he is one of the most important keywords to tailor against. If you don't tailor against Jack, you are going to have just the worst time. But you can build most keywords and most factions have answers in there, and you may be paying for a premium for models that you wouldn't normally take, but you will need them. You'll need that Ruthless. You'll need the ability to ignore hazardous terrain. You'll need the ability to heal your models, draw cards, have shielded so that the ping damage doesn't affect you. Whatever it is, you need answers to the problems that Jack poses you, because if you don't have the answers, there's nothing you can do, because Jack's only going to be bought in a game that he's good in. He's not a keyword that you'll take in every game, because he is a lot of fun to play with, but he's not a keyword you take in every game, because he's not versatile enough to do that. So if he's playing in a game, he's good at it. And if you don't have the answers to him, it's going to ruin your hobby.
So I'm going to flip this a little bit, Mike. How do you handle if someone brings in 2 or 3 Ruthless models, or if you know that they've declared a keyword that has a lot of Ruthless in it? Is there anything a Jack player can do?
You can take one certain model that I've thought of out of keyword. It's in Reva and Seamus's, so it's Red Chopper Revenant, Mourner. It has the Weeping Widow ability. That's another 6-inch aura to deal with that ignores your Ruthless. Like we mentioned, Bone Pile was a nice little tech in to deal with conditions. If you know you're facing somebody like Kairos, where there's going to be burning and injured, you can try to kind of tech yourself into against your counters using resers. But I did want to mention one more big counter, and this was kind of that second level countering beyond it, is being really careful how you hire into Daw. Because it's going to be a little more expensive to take those counters, but you have to be really careful if you take upgrades or not, and how many excess stones you bring. Because I want to completely ruin your resources. I don't want you to have a hand. I don't want you to have stones. I don't want you to have so many models. So another trick to counter against him, and I had to learn this facing a guy who brought almost 10 stones consistently learning to play a summoning master, is if you overtake your stones and you don't take that upgrade or two you normally would, those 2 more stones that you didn't spend on an upgrade, that upgrade, you helped me. Those 2 stones and you just didn't take your upgrade, that's a massive swing in your favor. That's 2 more times I have to try to execute you or do so much damage you stone it away. That's that much longer before I can just start instant killing anything I want.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, guys, let's take one more break. And when we get back from this break, I want to kind of learn from both of these guys. What are some of the biggest mistakes that they see experienced Malifaux players make? We'll be right back. Howdy, friends. Here on the 3rd floor, you'll find us playing Malifaux and other games on Mats by Mars. They are scratch-resistant, waterproof, wet erase marker compatible, and lighter than neoprene. Mats by Mars gives you over 40 designs to choose from. Pick a mat size, pick a design, then choose an overlay like the one for Marvel Crisis Protocol or Malifaux 3rd Edition. It will speed up deployment and the placement of strategy and objective markers. If you're going to AdeptCon this year, be sure to check out the Mats by Mars booth. Until the end of March 2020, you can use the new promo code 3rd Floor 320. That's 3rd Floor 320 to get a 10% discount on your next order. In the notes, you can ask for the 3rd Floor logo to be put on your mat for free. Again, use the promo code 3rd Floor 320 to get a 10% discount. Details are in the show notes. So one of the value of having, 2 guys that have been playing Malifaux for a long time on the show is they've seen a lot of things. So I'd be curious, Jamie, you've seen a lot of high-level play. You've played against a lot of experienced players. I would wonder, what are some common mistakes you see good players make when they're playing Malifaux?
To be honest, everyone's got their own weakness. And the more you play people, you learn their weakness or their fall down, I guess is a way to put it.
Achilles heels.
Yeah. So the thing that I think there's so many mistakes you can make. And everyone seems to, the more you focus on one thing, you can sort of drop the ball on another thing. It ultimately, I think rather than, it's a hard one to answer because there are so many. I think it's just, the more experienced you get, the less mistakes you make, and that is what puts you as an experienced player. I think people get ahead of themselves sometimes, and you can. The biggest one is fixating on your plan and not seeing the game evolve around you, and how actually that the counter's already happened, but maybe you haven't seen it until it's too late.
Well, let's shift it then a little bit, Jamie. What are some things that you think intermediate players, so people that you play them and you say, you know what, you've got the tools to be a top table player, but you got to stop doing this. What are some of the things that you think prevent people from being consistent podium finishers?
So forgetting that points mean prizes. That is literally a phrase I say to myself in games, is points mean prizes. When say I go to do something and it doesn't work out. I go to kill a model, it doesn't work out, and then I'd in my head I'd plan for that model to not be on the board, and I'd put the right resources in place, but something had happened, like they'd stoned 3 or I'd flipped a black joker, something like that. Now, it's so easy to then go, cool, well, I've got to dedicate another model to that. And then actually, but that model had a job, it had a role. And actually that turn you take it out might be the turn that it doesn't actually. You look at it the next turn or to the 2 turns later and go, well, actually now it doesn't have enough actions to go and place all the scheme markers I need it to place, or to get to where it needs to be to score me this point, or to get to, it's not in the right place to stop my opponent doing this. It's just a case you need to have your plan, but if it doesn't go the way you want it to, not sacrifice things that are important. And you need to look further. I think ultimately, and this comes down to actually the bigger overarching point, is you need to be playing ahead. You need to have looked into the future and know, actually, how many actions is it going to cost me to do this? How many models do I need to have in place to make this happen? And you need to look at points being the most important thing. Actually, if you dedicate one model to do something to score you your points and that doesn't work out, you need a backup for that. If you're trying to kill models, you don't necessarily need a backup for that. You've got to have a plan for your points and not get distracted from it.
Well, and it sounds like you're also saying you need to be flexible. Right. You need to be able to go to plan B when plan B, it might be better than what plan A was based on what thing went out. One of the big things that you mentioned, Jamie, that is, I think easily overlooked. And that is that it's arguable that actions are the most important resource in the game. And, when you, outside of summoners, when you start the game, you know how many potential actions you have. It's the number of models you have times their actions times the number of turns. And you have to manage that. So I think those are some really good call outs. How about you, Michael? What are some things that maybe those intermediate players out there might want to really start to focus on in order to really take their play to the next level? What are some mistakes they should avoid?
I would say talking to your opponent pre-game a little bit and finding out what their crew does, in a sense. Because I think a big issue that people have had, where we always hear after every tournament, Lynch is OP, Zareta's OP, Leviticus is OP, is you got to look at what your opponent does, in a sense, and avoid that, especially dealing with somebody like Daw. If you understand, I'm going to come in to your face, be aggressive, take your resources, I don't want you to be able to function, you need to not play my game. I want to draw you in. I want to throw off your game plan. I want to make you play my game. And I think people need to look at, like what Varney said, you need to go into figuring out, what do I need to do, and not what can I do at this moment.
Yeah. Looking into the future, right? I think and this is going to be a kind of a plug for myself and the podcast. Listening to the deep dives, I think, helps with that too, doesn't it, Mike? Is learning, even if you don't listen to the counters piece, just learning what the crew does, and having that overall meta knowledge about what you're going to be out there facing. So it's good to know what the keywords game is, so you don't play it. I completely agree with that too. Mike, do you have any plugs?
No.
All right. How about you, James?
Love on Third Floor Wars.
Thanks, man. How about you, Jamie?
So tickets for the UK Nationals went on sale, today for the time of recording, but probably not today when it comes out.
Yeah.
But we normally get quite a few international visitors. It'd be great to see loads of people turn up. It's, I believe, previously been the biggest event in the world for Malifaux, and it's grown, so it's sort of doubled in size.
It's amazing.
Since the first one of M3, so it'd be great to see it continue to grow. And obviously, last year we had the whole podium filled up with international visitors. So let's see if we can get some more in this year. But no, it's great. It is honestly the highlight of the Malifaux year for us. I mean, we don't have the sort of convention events that you guys have over there, but the UK Nationals is awesome, and then we go out and have the social bit afterwards as well. It's just a really good event. If you can were thinking of coming to one event in the UK, that is an event to come to.
Yeah, I've been talking to a couple guys about trying to figure out when we can get out there, because that's on my bucket list, is to be there and lose at Nationals. And I agree, Jamie. If in all ways you measure things, I think it has to be the premier event right now in the world for Malifaux. Well, gentlemen, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think that this is an exciting keyword. I think this is going to be good for Daw players, as well as that are probably going to end up facing against Daw. And for those of you that stuck around to the end, take Take care. Be sure to check out our shop on thirdfloorwars.com for the latest gaming apparel and gear. While you're there, check out how the USFO Tour is shaping up. How does your conference compare to the others in the United States? Where do you rank nationally? Get those models built, painted, and on the table so we can see you at the US Masters Invitational in October of 2020. Also, rate and write a review on this podcast for us. It really helps us find people almost as cool as you are. Thanks for listening. Howdy friend, Craig here. Is this episode making you realize you need to buy some models? Gadzooks Gaming is my favorite online retailer because of their large selection, killer prices, and great customer service. Don't you hate buying an entire crew box when you only need one model? Gadzooks sells crew box models individually and saves you a ton of money. They even have free shipping to the US and Canada if you spend $100 or more. Swing by gadzooksgaming.com and make sure you tell them Craig from the Third Floor sent you. All the details are in the show notes. Howdy folks, Craig here. Now if you love gadgets as much as we do, you're going to love the new Third Floor Wars Gadget Bundle from Schooner Labs. Branded with the logo of your favorite podcast, it comes with 2 measuring multi-tools, a compass stepper for those tight and important movements, along with a compact dashboard to track your turn, strat, and scheme scoring along with your soul stones and pass tokens. It is the perfect bundle for anyone who plays Malifaux or just wants to look cool while doing it. The link is in the show notes. Check them out and help support your favorite gaming podcast.
But something like plant explosives or corrupted ley lines where they can get away. Oh, I've just said the name of the new strat, haven't I?
So start it again. Something like...
You have to really look back at your crew and go, well, I've lost a lot of my tricks. What can I do now? And when he takes all of that away... I'm sorry, I blanked out on the question.
How often is he seeing turn 5?
Oh. But whenever you have no resources left...
All right. Not bad. Under 15 minutes. That's good. I thought he would take a little bit longer than that, but you guys know what you're talking about. That helps.
There is so much, there is so much, and to be fair, we haven't mentioned loads of stuff on him, but he does there's so many different things to remember, so we'll just cover it as we go through different sections.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had somewhere I was about to go with that rant, but I just kind of blanked out on where I was trying to end at. I was just like,
that's all right. I mean, it'll come up throughout the whole podcast.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's better to learn something about him in context than it is just to mention it in isolation. So
it was really good because you just mentioned we're about to say something about like a beater, like who's going to be doing the damage.
Yep.
And that's actually what I was trying to get to was he gets to turn 5 because the amount of resources wasted, if you even look at Daw and you say, I want to kill him, it takes so much to get him down to dead that it's rarely worth it.
Right. All right. Well, let's. I'll start with you then, Michael. Let's talk about maybe 1 or 2 key core models that you always bring in. We'll start with the Totem, and then you can add one more, and we'll go to Jamie. All right.
Talking about this is reminding me why no one wants me to play Jack.
I haven't played him yet. I don't have him painted, but I've been dying to do this with you guys because it makes me want to. That's for sure.
If you play him well, and the good thing about Jack, and I think it's good for the state of the game, is that he only plays well in a couple of scenarios and a couple of deployment types. Otherwise, he's pretty naff. But I mean, you could take him in anything, but there's just better choices. But he is horrendous. Like Matt is a really good player, but he literally hates it. He says it is the worst experience he's had ever playing Malifaux, and he used to play my Nico week in, week out. Like,
see, funny thing is though, where we're at in NC, everyone is a glutton for pain. I showed them Daw and they're like, that is bullshit. And I'm like, damn right. They're like, I hate it. Do it again. I want to find out how to beat it. And I'm like, I can explain how to beat it, but it's still a back-breaking process to do it. It still takes so much to do. It is never really worth it.
And I've got a feeling that segment's going to be a big one for us. So, Jamie, you've been through this, but Michael, with this segment, we're not going to go through every scheme, every strategy. So I'll probably start with Jamie to pick out maybe one strategy or one strategy / deployment that he works well in. If you can provide a backup. The one thing to keep in mind for this, though, and we may not be in a situation where we have 2 scenarios, is you got to think about competition. So it's not that Jack's good in in it, it's Jack's better than Molly in it, better than McMorning, better than Von Schill, because Jack has to compete against the other Resurmasters.
Definitely.
And then we'll do the same thing with schemes, just 1 or 2, maybe 3 schemes that he does well in, and then 1 or 2 schemes not to take. All right.
I think it's going to be pretty easy to summarize that in one section because it's more about he's good in things where you are in a certain place in the board and not otherwise.
All right. Well, let's start. We'll start there then, Jamie. Nice and efficient. I appreciate the prep, Mike.
Definitely. I actually have a little notebook sitting in front of me. I've been flipping back and forth. I've had the app pulled up on the Tormented cards and trying to jump to the upgrades. Oh. Yeah, I've missed quite a few little things I was wanting to try to touch on a bit more, but it's nothing super
You're not going to cover all of it, dude.
I know. But I mean, it's nothing super critical, which I don't feel as bad about. The big thing I want to kind of touch off of and get towards the end was you guys actually just kind of name dropped it, was the playing my game. Because I think that'll be that big thing that kind of helps all the crews everywhere is like, hey, well, if I stop playing your game and I start playing the game, I can start really pulling against stuff like Levy or Daw, Ironsides. Is like that next level of like, if you look at your opponent and go, hey, I don't want to do this thing, people just run straight into it way too much.
Yeah.
Hello.
How are you, sir?
No, because my camera's off, they can't see me.
Put your clothes back on, goddammit.
Wait, me or him?
They just told me to put my
you're
clothes
fine,
back
Mike.
on.
All right. So what do we, just to give me an idea, what are we looking at for you, Jamie, in second level play?
It's mostly going to be remembering all the different auras and stuff like that. A lot of it's going to be about actually sometimes it's better. No, I can do it. Come on.
Apparently not compatible with my
Okay. Sometimes, see you later. Sometimes it's better to move into the right position where actually you're going to be putting 3 or 4 models in a really bad position than it is to try and waste cards getting an attack off that you could save for later to actually, if they then invest resources trying to pass that terrifying, you're defending that attack and putting them in even worse a position.
Right. How about you, Mike?
It was pretty much going to be about the same thing. It was going to be a mix between positioning and getting a lot better feel of when to focus or when to do multiple attacks.
Okay, cool. I'm going to start with you then, Jamie. Is that all right? And Mike, I like that focus discussion because I think that's something that extends beyond Jack, so that's good.